Somewhere in Bellevue, Washington, there's an office with no managers, no org chart, no job titles, no one who can tell anyone else what to do. Every desk has wheels, so employees can roll toward whatever project excites them and roll away the moment it stops. That company is Valve, and for almost 20 years, buried somewhere inside that building, has been the most wanted video game on Earth, Half-Life 3. It's been prototyped, rebuilt, canceled, rebuilt again, multiple times by multiple teams, none of whom ever finished it. Not because Valve couldn't afford to. Valve is one of the richest, most profitable companies per employee in the entire industry. They have unlimited money, unlimited time, total creative freedom. And that, it turns out, might be exactly the problem. This is the story of the sequel that almost was, several times over, and the strange, bossless company that keeps building it and keeps refusing to let it out the door. To understand why this game doesn't exist, you have to go back to 2007, Half-Life 2. Episode 2 just ended, and it ended with a gut punch. A rocket strikes a transport ship. A major character dies in Gordon Freeman's arms. The screen cuts to black on the words, "To be continued." Valve had already announced the next chapter, Episode 3, set in the Arctic, a new ice weapon, a strange, blob-like enemy no one had seen before. Concept art leaked. Screenshots leaked. It felt close. 1917 days. That's how long fans have counted since Episode 2 released, without a single new piece of the story. Because behind the scenes, Episode 3 quietly stopped being made. Valve had built the entire Half-Life 2 saga on their existing Source engine, but by 2007, they'd started building something new, Source 2, and they made a decision that would define the next 2 decades of silence. They wouldn't finish Episode 3 on old technology. They'd wait for the new engine and build something bigger instead. What they actually tried to build with that new engine is stranger than almost anyone guessed, and it very nearly happened. Between 2007 and 2020, Valve didn't just sit on Half-Life. They kept trying to make it, and kept quietly burying the results. At one point, Valve handed a new Half-Life 2 episode to an outside studio, Junction Point, led by legendary designer Warren Spector. Then Junction Point got bought by Disney. The project got reassigned, this time to Arkane Studios, the team who'd go on to make Dishonored. Arkane's version was set in Ravenholm, the zombie-infested town players remembered from Half-Life 2. Valve canceled that one too. Reportedly, they felt it was too creatively boxed in by an old, familiar setting. Then there was an idea for a VR game set aboard a mysterious time-traveling ship called the Borealis, the same ship teased at the end of Episode 2, canceled. The VR technology and tools weren't ready yet. And then, around 2013 and 2014, Valve tried something completely different, a version of Half-Life 3 built around procedurally generated combat, levels that assembled themselves differently every time you played, inspired by the zombie horde AI from Left 4 Dead 2. This wasn't a pitch document. This was reportedly a real, playable prototype, built on the still unfinished Source 2 engine. By 2015, that version was canceled too. The engine simply wasn't ready to support what they were trying to do. 4 different attempts, 4 different teams, 4 different cancellations. Each time, Valve got close enough to almost taste it, and each time they walked away. And there's one story from inside this era that Valve has never fully confirmed. A leak so specific, so strange, that even hardened Half-Life researchers aren't sure what to make of it. According to a Half-Life researcher who says he spoke directly with a former Valve employee, there was a version of this story where Gordon Freeman wakes up 20 years after the events of Half-Life 2 inside the ruins of Aperture Science. He travels to a devastated American city. The people there don't see him as a hero. They see him as a curse. He's given a strange new weapon, a robotic arm capable of throwing enemies around like a force of nature. He's sent to negotiate with a faction called the Cremators to help overthrow the city's leadership. This account has never been officially confirmed by Valve. It comes from second-hand claims, years after the fact, about a project that was reportedly canceled before it ever got close to release. But the timeline lines up almost exactly with that mysterious 2013 to 2014 procedural prototype, which raises an uncomfortable question. How many different versions of this game have actually existed and disappeared that we still don't know about at all? Here's where the story stops being about a game and starts being about the company making it. Valve has no traditional management. Their own employee handbook says it outright. We don't have any managers and nobody reports to anybody else. There's a founder, Gabe Newell, but even he isn't anyone's boss in the traditional sense. Instead, employees are expected to find their own projects, literally roll their desks toward whatever team is doing interesting work. If enough people believe in an idea, it becomes a real project. If they stop believing in it, it quietly stops existing. There's no manager to override that. No deadline handed down from above to force it through. Once a year, employees anonymously rank each other, a process called stack ranking, which determines everyone's pay. It sounds on paper like the most enlightened workplace in the industry. No bureaucracy, no corporate politics, total creative freedom. But an investigative documentary by the outlet People Make Games spoke to former and current Valve employees who described something far messier. Some compared the internal culture to Lord of the Flies. Without managers to break ties or make final calls, Valve employees have described drawn-out internal conflicts over which direction a project should take. Conflicts with no one empowered to simply end the argument and ship the thing. So that's the actual answer to why Half-Life 3 kept dying quietly instead of failing loudly. There was never an executive forcing anyone to finish it. Every single cancellation across nearly 2 decades wasn't a mandate from above. It was simply enough people in the room losing conviction, with nobody positioned to override them. A studio that runs entirely on internal belief is brilliant, right up until belief runs out. And when it does, there's no one whose job it is to catch the project on the way down. For over a decade, Valve said almost nothing publicly about a new Half-Life. Then in 2020, they released something nobody expected. Half-Life Alyx, a full VR prequel set before the events of Half-Life 2. It wasn't Half-Life 3, but it did something enormous to the story. At the very end, Alyx meets the mysterious G-Man, the enigmatic figure who has shadowed the entire series since 1998. He shows her a vision of the future, her father Eli dying at the end of Episode 2. He offers to change that outcome in exchange for her help. Then he traps her in stasis and says he intends to make use of her later. It was, unmistakably, a setup, a door deliberately left open for a sequel. Around the same time, Valve quietly started hiring away veteran developers from studios like Rockstar Games and Naughty Dog, the kind of highly experienced physics programmers and narrative designers you'd need for one thing specifically, a massive, single-player story game. Something Valve hadn't attempted in years. By late 2024, rumors from community insiders who track Valve closely, names like Gabe Follower and Tyler McVicker, claimed that a new Half-Life project had entered internal playtesting. None of this is officially confirmed by Valve. All of it should be treated as rumor, not fact. But for the first time in over a decade, the pattern looked different. Not another prototype quietly assembled and quietly killed. Something that seemed to be surviving past the stage where every previous version had died. And that brings us to right now, to reports from just weeks ago that suggest something has shifted again in a direction nobody wanted to hear. As of mid-2026, Valve still hasn't confirmed Half-Life 3 exists, but recent insider reporting claims Valve has allocated an entire floor of its offices to the project. The same reporting claims the game may not be releasing this year after all, with one insider suggesting the game doesn't meet the required level Valve wants before it ships. If true, that would mean the exact same pattern that killed every previous version is happening again, right now, in real time. A team large enough and resourced enough to actually finish this, potentially still capable of deciding from the inside that it isn't good enough yet. No official statement has confirmed any of this. Treat it as an unverified report, not a fact. But it means the most important unanswered question about Half-Life 3 was never really, does it exist? It's whether a company with no one in charge can ever agree, collectively, that something is finally ready to let go. Every studio on Earth has a boss who can eventually say, ship it. Valve built a company that deliberately has no one who can say that. And for almost 20 years, that's meant the most anticipated sequel in gaming history keeps getting built, and keeps getting quietly buried by the very freedom that made it possible. Maybe the hardest part of making anything isn't building it. It's finding the one person willing to say it's finished.